A lot of you would think I'm a bit, weird about this, but I used to dream what it would be like to be a normal person and have more than 3 hours sleep.
So your interview with Pierre Koffman, was it with him directly?
It was, yeah. Lasted about 3 minutes, I think. Because I kind of put myself in that frenzy of no one could do what I could do, because at that point you didn't trust anyone to be able to do what you could do. So,
Yeah.
There's a lot of mental anxiousness for nothing, I would say.
Did you think you were going to keep 2?
No, not at all. No.
Really?
No. People like well, why did you do it? Or, are you crazy or whatever? And, but at the end of the day, you don't even think about it because you are working for the best chef in the world. And he was the one that everyone wanted to work for, and
Tom, how are you? How's life?
very well, very good, thank you.
How's the summer been for you?
Summer was good. I had a good break. I was off for first time ever for 6 weeks.
Nice. Ever?
It's funny, yeah. I mean, that was the longest holiday I've ever taken, and it's funny because I think no matter if it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or 5 weeks, it just goes as quick. You know what I mean? You wake up, holiday's over, back to school, back to work.
Yeah.
But that was great. We went and did a long road trip across the US from east to west. So
For the first time?
First time, yeah. So a lot of fun things that we saw and did, and some strange things as well. But it was great, educational.
Good to hear. Well, look, I'm excited about today and learning more about the amazing career you've had, and I'm sure many people know various parts of it. But to kind of kick things off, I think your how you're brought up and where you're brought up with your twin and those variables are relatively well known. But where did food sort of start for you as an interaction within family and when you were younger?
So basically, I grew up in Norfolk, and where we lived was pretty much on the border of the countryside. So we had a large garden, and my mother was very interested in gardening, but sort of on the sort of vegetable side growing, that's for sure, as opposed to the horticulture side. And she was really passionate about that. And no matter what the sort of, the weather or the month, she was out there in the garden tending to the vegetables, and making sure that we had fresh veg to eat. And, at a very early age, I got to understand that vegetables, were seasonal. You wouldn't expect to have, certain vegetables all year round. And I would say by the age of probably 6, I'll be talking about me and my brother quite a lot, so you may pick up on that. But so me and my twin brother, because he's a chef as well, we were taken into the garden, as I said, at a very early age. And she taught us literally how things grew and seasonality, and then we started helping her, picking and weeding and on all of this, and helping to plant seedlings as well. And probably by the age of probably 8 or 9, we then got our own little vegetable patch as well. We started growing our own veg, and so all through the 12 months of the year, we got to see different changes in the vegetable garden. And then then at some point, she said, okay, let's you're showing a bit of interest. Let's go into the kitchen and cook some things. And the first great memories that I had was of digging up potatoes, little new potatoes out of the garden, covered in earth, getting a bunch of mint, and then cooking them together, in the kitchen.
Great, isn't it?
And that first taste of buttered potatoes, tasting of mint, tasting of the soil, will stay with me forever. It was just amazing. And then she helped us sort of I really think go into our career as chefs. It was definitely something that I would say that we got from her, because we were not only cooking vegetables, she was great at baking, making cakes and bread and things like that. And I guess the weekends are all about family meal and having a good Sunday roast. And I also remember family meals was always about the family. Even in the evening, we used to have the dinner trolley that would come down.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Sometimes TV dinners and have a TV dinner, but it was properly done. It was amazing. And then my father was he was in the wine business.
Yeah.
So he also, I had a large part of inspiration for us as well, because being in the wine business, he traveled a lot at that point through France.
What did he do in the wine business? Sorry,
so he had a shop, and then he also imported and exported wine as well.
Oh, yeah.
So he did a lot of business at that early stage of sort of around early 80s with supermarkets and things. So finding a lot of new sort of table wines in France. Then there was, after that was New World wines, but in the sort of, I guess from around 11 we did sort of a lot of holidays and traveling in France till sort of late teens.
It must have been amazing to you just
it was, because we spent a lot of our vacation traveling through France and driving, and although it was pretty horrific at that time, because there was, I guess, of course, a lot of arguments, as there still is today, of back then it was map reading, and now you have obviously Wi-Fi and whatever, so you can do Google Maps and Waze or whatever. But back then, I remember my father just getting his map out and saying, "Okay, we're going from here to here," and he was then charting the whole trip.
Is this to go to different vineyards?
Yeah, everything. It was just hilarious. And so we traveled to different vineyards and go to all these different locations all over France, and then we would then travel to I guess other places of interest, like local restaurants and things that my father was taken to by different suppliers. And so we'd eat, sort of in different areas of France. And you kind of notice the sort of difference in regions, not only in wine, but also in food.
Yeah.
And I would, as with most kids, I was still at that point pretty fussy. I wasn't sort of diving into blue cheese and oysters and things like that, or, or offal or things like that, So, but I would, I definitely try things. And really, because of all that, I guess by the age of, I was only 11, where I thought, maybe I could become a chef.
Amazing. Yeah. You mentioned your relationship with your brother, and kind of taking you back a little bit there in terms of being pretty inseparable, I would say, from what you said. What was that like? Obviously, you're twins, and you do look exactly the same. As if for any people haven't seen the two of you together, but you were both wanting to do the same career. You both spent the same time together. Yeah. What was that kind of experience like? Did you always feel a big lot of competition, or was it always a nice relationship of kind of?
I think because we were identical twins, and we grew up literally together. We were never separated at all. We were all each other's sidekicks, and so we had this sort of inseparable bond. And I think because of that, we ended up liking exactly the same things. We had the same friends,
same influences,
and I think because of that, the bond that we had worked really well, so transferring over into work and supporting each other in that, and the same with our careers as well. So it was great to have someone that was shoulder of support as well as strength, and sort of discussing what we would do next in terms of what we wanted to do together and things like this. And going to college in Norwich, which was a great catering college, we did that together as well. But it was funny because eventually at school and things, they kind of knew after the first year that we shouldn't stick them together in the same class, because we were quite unruly as kids. Yes.
Was there any swapping each other's places? Any games like that?
I know we did all that time. I mean, at primary school, at high school, we swapped classes
all the time.
But teachers, they kind of got onto it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And they
it's not as easy.
We got a lot of bollockings, put it that way.
So age 11, you both sort of realised maybe going into a lot of food is where you both want to be?
Yes, because, again, funny story that, at that point, just before going to high school, I pretended to be a school leaver, and I called up the Norwich City College, putting on a very sort of deep voice, and I said, look, interested in becoming a chef. What qualifications do you need to have?
Yes.
And they basically said, we don't need any qualifications. Just come for an interview. Have a multiple choice entrance exam, very basic.
Yeah.
And if we like, basically, if we like you, we'll take you, because this was then, sort of early 80s, and not a lot of people were going into being chefs.
Oh, really? Is that right? Yeah, so it wasn't very popular. The college wasn't maxed out or anything like that?
No. I mean, it was one of the best at that time, compared to sort of Westminster, for sure.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was like, okay, great. So, you know, you're telling me we don't need exams? And they were like, no. I'm like, me and my brother were like, result. So we then went into high school knowing full well that we didn't need any exams, and basically we could, you know, go into school, don't give a shit. And not that what you should be doing, you should be learning and hard working and et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, no, we got into a lot of trouble, and our poor parents, we put them through 4 years of hell.
Really?
You know, parent-teachers evening were just the worst. They got worse every time. You know, usual comments were, you know, your sons are terrible, they kind of nothing, you know, they're always acting around, acting the fools, disturbing their class. You know, I feel like, you know, they just don't care, etc., etc. It went on and on and on. And then, you know, we had promised our parents that we would work hard for the last year and get those grades that we needed to get. And at this point, we still hadn't told them that we would become...
Oh, this was not a public plan. This was just
not tell them at all.
Fine, got you.
And of course, you know, we didn't revise, we didn't do any work, and, you know, we just listened to music, you know, as then on a cassette player and whatever. And I remember, you know, very vividly the getting the results, in being in the kitchen with my mother and father, and my father sort of, you know, hoping he's going to be a proud father, and reading out the results, got the envelope, started reading them out. I could see his sort of happy, smirky face turning into sort of, you know, kind of redder, more angrier as he was reading the results out, you know, C's, D's, B's for geography, which is not great. You know, more D's and more C's, and that was it. And he was basically like, what the fuck are you going to do? Like, and I thought at this point, we better fess up. So I sort of plucked up and says, we're going to become chefs. And he looked at me and looked at Rob, looked at, you know, my mother, and he goes, what the hell do you mean you're going to become chefs? And I, at that point, just said, well, if you think about it, you know, Mother's been a great home cook and inspiration, as if you have, traveling through France, da-da-da. And he kind of looked at me and he says, well, so what? You know, you got a crappy result. How are you going to do that?
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe I should fess up now. Anyway, so I said, well, I explained the whole story that, you know, I called the college and you just didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or just, you know, walk away.
Or be proud
at that point. Yeah. Anyway, so we went off to college and, you know, we became, you know, grade A students for the first time. So,
that's where it changed around.
Yeah.
When you, in that period, when you say you were going to become chefs, did you have the goals that I think you then had later on in the career? Or was it like, I just want to work in the kitchen? I don't know what it is.
I think that, you know, as kids, we kind of had it instilled into us, and my father, you know, I could see how hardworking he was, and you know what he put into his job. And same with, you know, my grandfather was also in the wine business, and he dabbled in a lot of things, that's for sure. But you know, I could see just through hard work it paid off.
Yeah.
And even as kids, you know, every sort of, you know, summer holiday and weekends, we worked where we were living in Norfolk. There were lots of glass houses and things, and they needed child labor and all of this, so we would happily go and work, you know, in these glass houses, you know, which at that point was a lot of money. I mean, we were, you know, on some school holidays and things, and, you know, we'd be putting in, I mean, shouldn't be doing this now, but we were probably, as 12-year-olds, doing anywhere from 40 to 50 hours a week.
Really?
Yeah, and coining it, proper coining it. You know, as a 12-year-old, I was taking home, you know, sort of £60 a week.
Wow.
That was, you know, that was in, you know, early 80s.
Yeah.
So it was good money.
What were you spending the money on?
I saved it.
Did you?
I put it away like a squirrel. And, you know, and that really sort of, you know, I guess, you know, we did paper rounds and anything to, you know, wash cars. So we're kind of, you know, entrepreneur a little bit. And so, you know, when, as I said, when we left college, you know, and to go into sort of, you know, the big wide world as such, then it was a really difficult sort of choice, because, like, you know, it was adamant that we were very passionate and, you know, skilled at what we did, but we were complete sort of novices.
Yeah.
And again, I had, you know, with the support of, you know, of my brother as well, you know, we kind of, I guess, battled the idea of where do we go, and then it was London that, you know, we were destined for. And again, another funny story. So when me and my brother had just started at a college, I had this teacher who was the one that interviewed me, and he comes up to me, he goes, I'd only been on the course for like 3 months, and he comes up to me, he says, just be careful, he was wagging his finger, I'm watching you. And I was like, okay, this is a bit weird, but anyway, nonetheless. And I go, what do you mean? He says, well, we were really, not really decisive about whether we would take you, And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, your interview wasn't great, and sorry to say, but your results weren't, A class, that's for sure. And I went, okay. He says, well, the only reason that we took you was because you're a twin. We didn't want to separate you. So I was like, well, thanks for the pep talk, mate.
So they were fine with Rob, but they had a problem with you.
Yeah, exactly. So I turned around to him as a cocky sort of 16-year-old, and I said, well, you know what? In 10 years' time, you're going to know who I am, and I'm going to be famous. So those are my words to him, and I walked off. So again, it was a little bit of an, kind of like a bit of a kick up my ass to sort of get me going, And as a kid, you kind of, a decade is such a huge amount of time, 10 years. So I kind of even then thought, 10 years is so long. I'm easily going to be able to get somewhere. I'm easily going to be able to make something of those 10 years. And then I really, made an emphasis on, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to get there? Who do I want to go and work with? And that's why, I guess even more so, me and my brother had such a strong bond. So we both, came to London, and that's really, really where we started with our, careers. And I said it was very tough, because at that point you only had, in terms of Michelin, you had, Marco Pierre White, you had the Roux brothers, you had Pierre Koffman, Nico, the dentist, and that was, and Pierre Koffman, and that was about it.
Yeah.
Raymond Blanc, who was in Oxfordshire. So to get into any of those restaurants at that point was impossible. They all had literally waiting lists of chefs to go and work there, and they all had previous experience. Most of them were all French. So I remember with my father sort of, writing individual letters to each of the head chefs in these different restaurants and hotels. I must have written, 15, 20 different letters. And all of them came back with, thanks for your lovely letter. He's very passionate, show your dedication and what have you. And I put the usual, I'm very hardworking, I'm dedicated, I'm passionate, I'll work for nothing, all this. And all of them came back with, we can't take you because we've got a waiting list of chefs who have more experience. What I suggest is you get more experience if you come and work for us. I'm like, well, how the hell can I get experience if you don't give me a job?
Yeah.
So I then said to my father, what about if I just say, look, I'll work for nothing to prove myself for 6 months. So he said, okay, you sure I'll do that? I said, yeah. And this is where I squirreled a lot of money back. So, I had, a bit of money in the bank. And anyway, so again, I wrote off same letters, same chefs, same hotels, blah, blah, blah. And literally I got 2 responses back. Because they were all like, oh, God, it's this kid again. What's he telling us now? And one was from Michel Roux Senior. I wish I kept the letter, but he said, look, thank you so much for your lovely letter. I would really have, loved to give you a job, because I can see that you're really, really passionate. The things that you're saying, I can see that you're probably going to go far, but I just can't take you because it's just not fair to the others. Right. And the other chef was David Cavaliers, who had a 1-star on Queenstown Road, and he said, yep, I'll be happy to, to give you something, as long as you come and work for me for free for 6 months, then, come and see me. Anyway, that's what happened. He came and gave me a place for 6 months.
Yeah.
And after that, he offered me a job. So that's how I sort of got in to sort of, being, into sort of, I guess, Michelin restaurant.
Did you have the qualifications from college? So you passed that period?
Yeah, I had 706, 1 and 2, City and Guilds.
So you were ready to go and walk straight in. And what happened to Rob? Where did he go? To London with you?
He basically, what he did, he was going to go and work at the Roux Brothers, but he had to work in their corporate sector first.
Got you.
Before he went and worked with the Roux Brothers at the Gavroche and then the Waterside. But he had to do like a year of working in corporate, which I wasn't really wanting to do. And he was doing like weird hours, like, sort of 14 hours straight, coming in like 4 a.m. or whatever and working until 4 or 5. At least, he had kind of, the evenings off or whatever. but I obviously wanted to try and go into Michelin straight away.
Yeah.
And then that kind of then snowballed. David got me a job with Pierre Koffman, or got me an interview.
Yes.
I went and worked with him, and so kind of
snowballed. It all snowballed.
Yeah.
The first day walking into Cavaliers, do you remember it?
I was probably bricking it quite a bit, because I was completely, I was like 19. And
had you been in a kitchen, a professional kitchen, like a restaurant kitchen at this point?
I had worked. So the year before, I had worked in a restaurant called Mirabelle in Eastbourne, in the hotel.
Yeah.
Which is a great restaurant. But at least it gave me, some proper experience in the industry. So I thought I should definitely go to somewhere first to get experience.
Yeah.
Because I think going somewhere completely blind into a professional kitchen was probably not the most smartest of things. Yeah.
No, for sure. So day one, what happened on day one? Do you remember much of it?
Well, I worked with this French chef called Denny, and I was on the veg section. I was helping him. So I was basically his gopher, his sidekick, and everyone's gopher and sidekick, but I was mainly with this French guy, Denny, who was a funny chap. Indeed, he was very, very French. He had yellow teeth from smoking like a pack of fags literally like every hour, and drinking 20 cups of coffee with about... I remember like he would have Nescafe like on tap and having like 4 sugars. And this guy was just, very funny. He really was. But, I learned a lot from him. And after, 6 months, I was kind of, on my own. Then the tables turned a little bit, because then I was in charge. The buck stopped with me, and then I was doing, I kind of had a little bit of easier hours than everyone else before, when I wasn't getting paid. And then as soon as I was getting paid, then, I was starting to be the first in and almost the last out. And, I had, I had to really take it on the chin when I was getting criticized, because, if things went wrong, it was my fault then, as opposed to Denny's. And, so it was a lot harder.
Yeah. You wrote about a time where I think you had a rough night or a rough few days, and David's wife knocked on your door, and you had a conversation with David when you were really feeling like maybe it wasn't the right thing.
Well, it wasn't even that. I mean, I literally I had a shit service or whatever. And, I was probably doing then, sort of 90 hours a week, 90 hours a week, whatever. So long days. And my, as I said, my twin brother, and we were living together.
All right.
In London in a place. And so he was off, every evening. And this is, we're only, whatever at this point, 20 years old. So, I wasn't having any social life, whereas he was. And we rented out one of our rooms to our cousin. And she, at that point, she was doing modelling as a career.
Right.
So my brother was going out all these like parties with models and having fun. And I was like, feeling like shit, looking like shit, coming in like,
yeah.
And then he was just about, coming in as well after partying and having fun. And I was like, fuck this, man. This is shit. I'm in my 20s. I should be enjoying a bit of life, but I'm like, I'm not.
Yeah.
Getting, barked at, bollocked. And it was just like, you know what? I'm not going to come in tomorrow. So I went in, and then I literally wrote a note, left it in the fridge, and said... So
you had the shit service and left the note in after?
I did, yeah. And then I put, I'm not coming in tomorrow.
Why in the fridge?
Well, because I didn't want to leave it out.
Fair enough.
Because I knew that they would open it, my mise en place fridge, because I knew they would open it to see, Tom, because Tom's always in first, where the fuck is he?
Right.
And then they would open it because they'll have to see what's to be done, because, the veg section, you had like so much to do. It's just like crazy.
All the prep and stuff.
Yeah. And I basically said, I can't take it, or, whatever. And anyway, at that point, you didn't have mobile phones. There wasn't a way of, reaching out to you. Although they only had, the way of contact was by, either coming to knock on your door or they'll put a letter through the, letterbox. Yeah. And so anyway, so literally like, I think it was probably like the 4th or 5th day, I still hadn't turned up. And then I had a letter through the door. It was from David's wife, Sue, and basically said, David wants to have a chat with you. you know, take the week off or whatever, and then come and see us, you know, in a few days or whatever. So, you know, I partied like a mofo, and literally is like, you know what, I was like, I got all the partying out, was, you know, myself, and it was like, okay, it's okay, you know, it's not that great, and you know, might as well go back to it, you know, because I kind of missed the adrenaline, missed the fun, and getting me ass kicked and whatever. And anyway,
that isn't it in so many ways that like even just
I mean, you know, and so I went back, had a chat, like heart to heart with Dave, and I said, look, you know, it is hard. I'm only, you know, I am only whatever, you know, 19, 20 years old at that point, and he said, look, you know, I'm not going to treat you any different, and you know, okay, you can tone down the language a bit, but you know, it is what it is, and. But he said, you know, I see something in you, and if you persevere at it, I'm sure you'll do well, you know. And I thought, okay, I might as well. He's given me a bit of a pep talk. And
had he ever had that conversation with you before? Was that the sort of first time you'd had that moment of like, I guess, being recognised, if that makes sense?
It was, yeah.
I must admit,
even though I was doing, you know, turn veg that comes out in the backside and whatever. And I remember my thumb, because obviously when you turn veg, you know, and my thumb was just in fucking pieces, literally. The amount of, back then it was like turn veg on everything, you know.
No. Yeah. So how long did you stay there for then? After that?
I did a year. I'd stayed a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I said, yeah, I want to go somewhere else. And I said, definitely, you know, Pierre Koffman. And so David, called him up and, you know, got me an interview, and I went and had an interview with him.
Because I guess you could say that sticking it out and listening to David at that point for that year, being so young, kind of paid off, because
totally.
Then you got that.
Totally did.
And there's almost a great lesson there about kind of sticking through.
It is, yeah, you know, and it's obviously very different today, because now that, you know, it's definitely not as difficult, or in, you know, it's not like an endurance, you know, kind of race. But I think, you know, at some point, you know, everyone has a little bit of a heart to heart with someone, or there's someone that inspires them, or makes them, you know, stay on that path. And that point, you know, that was what David did, you know.
So your interview with Pierre Koffman, was it with him directly?
It was, yeah. Lasted about 3 minutes, I think.
Okay. I
remember, you know, I was wearing some probably dodgy outfit, dodgy suit, you know, as you do.
Where was it?
It was at the Toncle.
Oh, wow.
And as I said, it literally lasted 3 minutes. I go in and I'm like, obviously nervous as anything. My hands are sweating. I'm like, you know, this is the man. This is, you know.
Yeah.
And I go in, like, I must have looked so nervous. I'm like, you know, and I was told to sit down in reception and wait. I was just like, I was like, you know, man, I don't want to see like I'm nervous with, you know, sweaty hands, like this. And like, you know, 8 minutes, you know, he comes in and he goes, do you want a coffee? And I thought, yeah, I better take coffee. So I had this espresso. It was like, you know, strong and pretty disgusting, and you know, I just thought I better have it. And you know, he shook my hand, and you know, he said, so I hear you want a job. And I said, yes, please. And he goes, something along the lines, you know, are you any good? And okay, yeah, I'm good. And okay, see you tomorrow.
That was it?
That was about it, yeah. That was about it. Like, lasted about 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And not quite tomorrow, we'll see you next week or whatever. And,
yeah.
And that was it. You know, I was like, okay, I got a job? Yes. Like, and that was it, right? Yeah.
Was that normal for the way he would bring people into the kitchen?
Well, I think because, you know, David, obviously given, you know, spoken to him, but, you know, really at that point, you know, there were so many chefs that if I hadn't worked out, there'd be another one and another one and another one and another one. So, you know, it didn't really matter, you know. And I think, you know, he, it's funny because his kitchen as well was, you know, 80, I would say 85 to 90% all French.
Yes.
There were no English. So I think he was probably quite interested in taking, you know, a couple of English guys writing completely French as well.
Because you spoke before about the kind of balance between the English and the French chefs.
Yeah.
In terms of the way the French chefs would probably be looking at the English guys as not being able to cook. I think.
Well, completely unbalanced, I would say. Yeah, they basically. Funny, you know, they all came to work in London. Yeah. Yet, you know, they completely, disliked, hated every sort of thing about cultural side of English cooking, you know, in terms of, you know, what was predominantly, I would say, as I said, a French brigade, but, you know, the atmosphere, you know, everyone spoke in French, but, you know, I think they just had it in their heads that the English couldn't cook, you know, they liked everything well done. There was no sort of history about English cooking, you know, it was all out of a packet, or it was all, you know, processed or whatever. So, you know, there was me and a couple of other, well, one other English chef at that time. So we got a lot of shit, And basically the guy that I was put with, Laurent, his name was, I didn't know what his surname was, it was just Laurent. We didn't speak, like literally. I worked on the larder section for 3 months, and, you know, we didn't speak. Literally, we, you know, because I was taking over from him, and, you know, he was, like, at that point in charge, he would do the mise en place list, he would write it, and then we would just cross it off as we got through it, and we never spoke, never. Because
the Pierre Koffman's kitchens were known to be quite quiet. Am I right in saying that? In terms
of... No.
They weren't. They were loud.
No, they were quite a lot of, you know.
Oh, really? And was that different from Cavaliers?
French people. Yeah.
Was that a different environment to what you were used to?
Well, no, David's, you know, was, you know, quite, you know, testosterone pumped, that's for sure. But I mean, you know, there was less people, and there was only like 5 of us in that little kitchen, you know. Yeah. We only did like, you know, 15, 20 covers at best, you know. Oh, wow. There it was like, you know, 50 plus. So, you know, completely different scenario. A lot more chefs. And, you know, the French typically tried to, you know, stitch us up pretty much every day.
In what sense?
Oh, they would, you know, if we had something that we made and put it in, they would, like, you know, try and put something there to fuck it up. Or if we put something on the stove, they kind of, you know, put it in the center and it'd be burnt. You know, usual school tricks, put some salt in.
Did that ever deter you from kind of being...
No, I gave back, you know. For sure I did, yeah.
You're just going to not say what you did publicly, fair enough.
No, but listen, at the end of the day, you know, it was a great kitchen to work in, because again, you know, I think Pierre could see that, you know, having to work in that environment above the others, because they just really, you know, were trying to downtrod on you all the time, and you know, to be in that and to persevere was, you know, was pretty tough. And and I said he himself was not, you know, was not an angel at that time. So it was, you know, it was a hard kitchen, and I think because he could see that we persevered, you know, every 3 months he would move me, you know, all the time, like, into another section. And, you know, I know full well that a lot of chefs in there, sometimes they stayed, you know, 6 months on a section rather than 3. So I was moved, you know, consecutively every 3 months. And it's funny, when I was then moved to the fish section, I literally had a freaking heart attack, because, you know, I had not at that point really done any proper fish prep, apart from, you know, some mingy lemon soles at college, you know, like, you know, or some farmed salmon, you know. And here I was on the cusp of, you know, of cooking in a 2-star restaurant, cooking fish to order, which I'd never done before. I mean, can you imagine? I'm like, then got to, okay, I had a handover of like a week with a French chef who hated me. You know, I had
to make 22 at this point. How old are you?
21.
21.
I had to make my own sauce. I had to do all the fish prep. You know, I hadn't seen a live scallop, let alone fucking shelled one. Prepping wild salmon, prepping wild sea bass, prepping langoustine, lobsters, filleting red mullet, like. All of this was completely, like, you know, Martian to me, like. And so I had to have a chat to Pierre, and I said, look, it's lovely that you've, you know, put me on the fish section, but I have to fess up, I've not filleted anything. I had to tell him, because I said I have not filleted anything since out of the college. And he looked at me, he says, when I fucking go, you'll fucking learn. I walked off. Fucking hell. Literally, that was it. So anyway, he kind of did take me under my wing. And, you know, and there was, I guess, you know, I had probably the best part of, you know, six weeks with him, and he helped me. And there was obviously a few butchered pieces of fish, which I tried to hide, you know, out of the way, because I, you know, a couple of wild salmon fillets, I know I had like completely fucking knackered out. I, you know, cut through the whole fillet and you know, there was just a lot of things that just got hidden out of the way. But you know, again, he tutored me into the art of fish prep, and it was, you know, I soon got up to. I had good knife skills at least, and I got up, you know, I got up to speed pretty quick. You know, by the time I was on my own, you know, I could literally, you know, I could break down a whole wild salmon, you know, in like 5 minutes.
Bloody hell. And how long would that have taken you when you first got there?
Oh man, half an hour.
Flipping out.
Half an hour.
And that's just from a repetition, the pressure of doing it and just going consistently.
Yeah, so, you know, it was, you know, and I definitely, you know, there's a lot of bollockings. I overcooked fish and, you know, didn't do it in the right pan or the right way or the right heat, or, you know, there was obviously mistakes, you know, but you, as I said, as long as you didn't keep making the same mistakes.
Yeah.
And then also, you're kind of really also in the mode of service and listening and paying attention of when you cook your fish, when you start plating, and, you know, when you bring things up to the pass and making sure that things go on the plate at the right time. And all of this I hadn't done before. So again, it was, you know, it was all, and then, you know, and all the, I guess in service, you know, people calling things out in French and whatever, it was, you know, it was like...
Do you speak French from being a kid? Like, obviously trying to...
I had, I guess, enough of a understanding of a little bit, you know, because I'd heard it and I'd spoken a bit. And so at least I did have a bit of that,
which I'm sure would have helped.
Oh, it helped, yeah.
When you joined that kitchen, it was a 2-star?
It was 2-star,
and you went to a 3-star while you were there?
And then I went to 3-star.
That process, for, again, those that maybe don't know what that process really looks like, going from 2 to 3, what does that really mean for the work?
It's a big fucking deal, you know? I mean, it really is. Like, you are... Well, at that point, there was only, you know, a handful of 3-stars in the whole of the UK, and the majority of them, well, all of them were in London.
Yeah.
So it was a monumental moment, and, you know, and I remember the day, and obviously Pierre Koffman was, you know, was exceptionally happy, as he should be, you know, and it was then even, you know, even more, I guess, more pressure, you know, on all of us, I think, at that point. But, you know, it was amazing to be there, to say that I had now worked in a, you know, in a 1-star, 2-star, and now 3-star.
Yeah, very quickly in your career as well.
Yeah.
What does the kitchen need to go through, and obviously the business, the restaurant, the whole picture, to go from 2 to 3? Is there a mission that everyone knows about to get there? Is it, we're going to do this in 12 months, this is what we're going to do to get there? How does that really look?
I think, you know, it's difficult. It's very difficult to say, and I think, you know, in terms of, you know, it's a consistency, you know, in the food, there's creative side of the menu, and there are certain criteria that you definitely have to stick to, but it's above all, it's, you know, it's consistency, and, you know, in the cooking, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's clear from what you guys achieved. So you were there for 4 years.
I basically went. I did two stints. You know, I did a year there. Then I left to go to another. I did work after that for Philip Britton at the Capitol Hotel in Knightsbridge, was another 1-star. Then I went to work with Richard Neat at Pure Terre. Which was a bit of a crazy kitchen.
So tell me about that kitchen. And why did you want to go there? What drew you from?
Well, I mean, he was then, you know, cutting throat of cooking in London, and, you know, everyone knew it was a bit of a bat's place to go and work in. It was tough. It was, you know, it was kind of on the edge of your seat, kind of roller coaster ride, and the food, you know, was very well respected, and but, you know, it was crazy cooking. You know, it really was. You know, it was a disgusting kitchen to work in. You know, it wasn't clean. Everything was secondhand. You know,
wow.
Everything always broke down. Fridges, stoves, you name it. You know, we had to fix them in the middle of service sometimes, and, you know, it was just crazy, gang. It really was just.
But why did you want to go there first? But because it was
because of that, and because, you know, Richard had a great reputation, and you know, he's very well respected. You know, of being, you know, one of the new chefs in London that was you know, pushing the parameters of cooking, and I was drawn to that. You know, it's kind of where I'd see myself being pushed, and you know, being, I guess, put under more pressure of being able to perceive and cook at a high level, you know, and that's just what I wanted, you know, to do.
And in this point in kind of your own individual career in terms of where you wanted to get to, what you wanted to achieve. You've been in kitchens that have done the 1-star, the 2-star, the 3-star. You've been around the scene. Had you start to set your own aspirations, your own goals at that point?
Well, yeah, because I kind of, as I said, I had sort of said to myself that I must get to, 2-star and 3-star level. That's really where, where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And that was adamant that I had to do that, for sure. And at that point, I kind of also was thinking about going to work abroad as well, because at that point, no one was doing it, and I think in terms of, how to get, I guess, above head and shoulders anyone else, that was what you had to do.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was all about France and obviously French gastronomy. There was nothing about, Scandinavia or Spain or anywhere like that. It was France. And because also Richard, he worked with Joël Robuchon in Paris as well, and he was the first English chef to go and do that. So, kudos definitely to him in terms of, doing that. And then he helped me get, a position in France, in Paris with Joël as well.
Which wasn't what he was doing for everyone at that point, right?
Oh God, no.
Why do you think he thought you would survive?
Well, I think because I had the mental strength to do it. Because I think what he put me through as well, was pretty hard.
Yeah.
So he could see that I had the toughness, I had the resilience. I didn't care about what hours I was working. I was mentally tough on lack of sleep and all of the usual things. And he knew that as well, that I wanted to be someone. I wanted to get somewhere in my career. So it was all a bonus for him. And I had, as I said, I had the I guess the real insight from Richard and in knowing what I was going into as well, and being prepared for that, because Joël Robuchon was obviously the ultimate level in terms of everything, it was,
because they're so different as well, right? The kitchens,
so different.
Yeah, because that's where it's super quiet.
Yes,
kitchens,
it is. Yeah,
can't talk, etc.
Yeah.
So you'd kind of done what by that point 6-7 years around London at that stage?
No, I was then still. I was only when I went to Paris. I was literally still 24.
Oh yeah, of course, you must have been done.
Yeah.
So you headed to Paris. Obviously, you've been in France before from a kid. So you walk in and you go. You have a placement straight away. You didn't have.
I didn't have to interview. No, I think.
So day one there, what was that like?
I basically bricked it, or shit, or really? Shit to brick, whatever this expression is. No, it was just, again, I kind of had these sort of, I guess sort of flashbacks of my time, Pierre Koffman, and thinking, oh God, here I am as an Englishman actually in Paris. They're going to just destroy me. I thought they're going to be much worse. They're going to just make me leave in about a week. And I thought, I was just, so bloody nervous, because there I was, being given a place, and I was then, a chef de partie. I was on the meat section. I was a chef de partie. And, I just thought they're going to crucify me. And anyway, it was great, because there was literally a real team emphasis, on everyone working together. There's camaraderie, and everyone sort of, helped each other, and good communication, and so you kind of there was help. There was literally probably one or two people that spoke a little bit of English, but again 90% of everything was service was in French. Joël Robuchon only spoke to me, and in French. He didn't speak any English apart from English boy kind of thing. So again, it was very inspiring on every level, because in terms of the produce they were using, the kitchen was just world class, out of control, amazing. You learned so much every day. I'd say the only downside was as I said, the insane crazy freaking hours that we all did was just
What did a normal day look like for you this is from the very start, right? You're thrown in the deep end. A normal working day for you in that kitchen, what would that look like?
So basically, because I was living like 45 minutes away in Place de République, and I'd had to travel to Trocadero. So that was like, that was 4:45 a.m., wake up, or just before. I would then, get to sort of Trocadero. I was very quick at getting dressed in the morning, maximizing as much sleep as I could. I'd get out of my bed, get dressed, and leave in like literally 5 minutes, And so, I'd be literally by the address of where it was, 65 Poincaré, by sort of, 22, we'd meet before on the Trocadero, which is like 6 roads coming into the roundabout. We'd have a few hours with meat for a double espresso. I was sort of getting into my espressos every morning, the sudden hit. And then, get into the kitchen, be in the kitchen, change, ready to rock and roll by, 10 to 6, and then, you just crack on. I was under the wing of a guy that I was going to be taking over.
Right.
Again, I was with him, I was going to be with him for 3 months. And, every day was a different day in terms of what I did and was learning and, but it was basically a mix of doing, sauce work, preparing sauces, or every section did their own garnish. So it was a mixture of doing some meat, some sauce, some garnish. And, you worked all the way through, there was lunch, but not really. I mean, it was a very quick, eat something 5 minutes and then, you had to be ready on the dot of, 10 to 12. And at 11 o'clock, we kind of really all had to be ready, 11:15, to clean all your section down, clean the stoves. They were like shiny and copper was polished and whatever. And, so we were ready to rock and roll by, 12 for lunch service. And, at that point, Pierre Koffman was very vocal. He was calling out the checks and making sure that he was very good at communicating, making sure that everyone was working together. Here, Joel, was not sort of like that at all. The kitchen ran like with complete silence. You basically had, 30 chefs in that kitchen, all working. Once it was literally like, there was around 5 or 6 chefs. Larder had a lot of work. There was, a lot of, at that point, his style was a lot of intricate little details, a lot of dots, a lot of, things placed on. So there was at least 5, 6 chefs, in the larder. There was about 4 chefs on the veg section, then the hot section, then the fish section, and then the meat section. There was a lot of chefs. Hectic. I mean, even the guy on the veg section, because there's the famous potato puree they used to. That alone, would take him about an hour and a half to make, just the potato puree.
Flipping out.
Just the potato puree. So you can imagine why we needed to do, long hours. It was crazy. Anyway, so he would then start the service, call on checks, and everyone just used to say, "We chef, yes chef." You were never allowed to ask him what had he just been called. You're never allowed to go up and look at the checks. You never, you just could.
How did you learn those rules? Was it just told to you on the day one?
No, it was just the way it was. And then you had to, you stuck a piece of tinfoil onto the side of the wall.
Yeah.
You put your table numbers, you put the time that it was on, and then he would read out if you had, in terms of meat preparation, because he also had 2 different tasting menus at that time, as well as the a la carte. So we had about 8 to 10 different main courses with specials as well. So it's quite a lot.
And the level of detail that goes into every single one of these.
Yeah. So but it was very methodical in terms of how everything was run. He was very conscious and very good at relaying information, but it was only done once. That was it. And what I did find out is if you fucked something up there and then, you were gone.
How did you find that?
Well, because it was the guy that fucked up on my section.
What happened?
So we had this, and I hated this dish because of the garnish that was. So it was like so opulent. This dish, it was literally a whole pantad, so a whole roast guinea fowl for two. So a whole guinea fowl you have for two. Alongside that, you would have on a foie gras, you have a big and a small piece. So you have the big piece of lobe of foie gras. So that was poêlée. So pan fried when you were finishing roasting the pantad, the guinea fowl. You would also cook these moon-shaped potatoes, which took forever to do. So you'd have 10 of those each. So, jeez. Yeah, 10. And they were like proper, like nice turned potatoes. They used to take forever to do. Then you'd have this, big piece of foie gras.
Yeah.
And that whole dish, we were like, going down now. Whenever that came on, you'd probably sell, 4 or 5 a service.
Is that a special?
It was a special, yeah. And, it was a bitch of a dish, to get right, and so just cook the foie gras, cook potatoes, and everything was cooked in the same pan. So it was a beautiful dish. Anyway, on one service, he'd been there for as I said, he was coming up to 2 years. He was leaving, and I think, he'd probably just done about 2 months with me. And then because he was still there, he was in charge. So he forgot to write down on the I had missed it because we took it in turns, who was in charge of writing, and someone who was in charge of, plating and doing all the cooking. Thank God it was him at that time. And, he forgot to put the guinea fowl in. And so Robuchon called away, patate pour deux, and his face went white. So I knew instantly that he had fucking forgotten it.
What did he do?
So he basically, he said to the chef, I'd forgotten it. He lost his obviously lost his mind and went nuts. And basically, he said to Pichivu, and he had to leave straight away. Boom, take his knives and go.
Wow,
he's gone.
What were you thinking at that point?
Oh shit, because I was in charge.
I was going to say also, there's no one, you haven't got to look at it.
And one of the sous chefs jumped on with me, and we finished the lunch service. But I was then kind of on my own with another chef. But I was then in charge, and so I was
going home at the end of that day and sort of decompressing from a day like that. I know you haven't lost your job or anything, but seeing that happen, seeing that chaos just unfold, you must have. I mean, you're probably too tired to even think about it, right?
Well, yeah, because you just so the way it worked, you by the time you finished lunch and got cleaned down, again because we had to properly clean everything, and it was just crazy. We'd finish at 4. We would then go outside literally for 15 minutes. We'd either go to Haagen-Dazs or just go to another cafe, have some more coffee, and come back.
I've heard about your ice cream diet.
Yeah. Get a bit of sugar in, and then you'd have, star food at 4:30 for 15 minutes, and then you get set up for service, ready for kind of 6 o'clock, and then you work all the way through, and leave. By the time service to finish, you get cleaned down. It was I'd be home at 1:45 in the morning.
And back.
Sorry, 1:45.
So you're home about 3 hours?
Yeah, 3 hours sleep. And the other funny thing, which was just crazy, so we were getting paid, as you can imagine, we're getting paid absolute, pittance. I'm talking, of doing, obviously, yes, 100 hours a week, 20 hours a day, 5 days a week. I was probably getting literally £120 a week, literally yeah, proper.
Jeez, and that was mid-90s?
Yeah.
So even that's not a huge difference,
no.
Flip it now.
Yeah, it was nothing. And on top of that, we would have to
120 quid a week.
We would have to buy our own cleaning products. So every week we were given a bottle of Javel, which is bleach.
Right.
Okay, probably about this size. And that was it. We would have to buy our own scourers, our own sponges, our own J-cloths, our own washing up liquid, out of our own salary.
To keep your section
clean,
immaculate.
and tidy.
And if it wasn't clean and immaculate, it's gone.
Yeah.
Flipping hell.
Yeah.
The way that kitchen was working, from everything you've just said for the last couple of minutes, do the kitchens still work like that now?
No, thank God.
And there's not even a kitchen in France that will be working like that.
No. But it was, as I said, people well, why did you do it? Or, are you crazy or whatever? And, but at the end of the day, you don't even think about it because you are working at that time for the best chef in the world, and he was the one that everyone wanted to work for, and it was amazing. And I don't, as I said, of course it was hard, it was tough. You know, there were some good days and some bad days, and you know, by the end of, you know, the week on Thursday, you know, you had a splitting headache from sleep deprivation. You know, it was, at the end of the week, it was torture, because you just had horrific headache, which no, you know, Panadol or Nurofen would take away, because it was just constantly there. And then Friday was a kind of euphoria because you finished, you know, and again, after service on Friday, we had to do, you know, massive clean down, and it was, you know, whatever, 4 o'clock finish, 5 o'clock finish, and I'd be going home and the birds would be tweeting and the sun was coming up, and
romantic, no?
A little bit, yeah. It was, you know, walking through Paris and the birds are tweeting and the sun's coming out, lovely. I get home and then I'd sleep until lunchtime, you know, like 1 o'clock, whatever, and then get up, go and have lunch, and then walk around. And at that time, you know, Paris, you know, I probably knew better than London, you know, I really did. Like, you know, because you could walk everywhere in Paris, and where I was quite central. And so I used to spend my weekends just walking around, going to markets, getting some nice food, cook myself dinner, go to the cinema or go to the park or whatever. So it was, you know, it was nice. It was.
I guess you've mentioned it a little bit, but like your physical, mental health in that time must be like pretty low in terms of just like being so knackered and exhausted.
Not really, because, you know, you were working for one of the greatest chefs in the world, so you gave a shit. Like, really, you just got on with it, you know. And the only thing that did happen for a while, didn't last very long, but we had this chef who came from America, and he came to do a stage because his parents used to eat at Avenue Poincaré quite a lot. Yeah, it's obviously, you know, from a wealthy background, whatever. And what I don't think the line of communication got to obviously what this guy was doing in terms of, you know, many hours he should be working on or not working. Right. And, you know, the message got mixed up, and he was then working the same hours as us. He was working 20 hours a day or whatever. And then basically, obviously, he then told his parents, and his parents then called Robuchon and basically, oh, what about, you know, what's going on? And literally then, you know, for about, he then obviously he left, but then for about 3 weeks, you know, we all had to start at 8 o'clock in the morning, you know, we weren't allowed in.
Because he was trying to sort of reset, because he was trying to be fair to make sure everyone was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But didn't that screw you guys over?
No, totally, yeah, it was totally in the shit. We're like, you know, it's just crazy. And then literally after 3 weeks, it went back, and then back to the...
lesson learned.
Back to the literally 20 to 6, you know, starting work, but yeah.
Flipping out. So after a bit of time in Paris, you get a call to go back to London.
I then went to work while I had already at that point left. Right. And I had started a job in with Gérard Boyer at Le Créa. It was another 3-star in Champagne. And that was hilarious. Well, it was hilarious, but it was just so different on every level in terms of working and hours, and, you know, it was in a beautiful hotel in Champagne, and they had AM and PM teams.
Oh, really?
And I was like,
what the fuck?
What? I have evening off? What? I have the morning off? So we basically did a week of AMs, and then you had a week of PMs. And I was just like,
glorious.
This is like Olly camp, literally. And what am I going to do with myself? You know, I had a bit of social life, and that I was only there. And everyone was nice. You know, kind of, there wasn't this pressure, there wasn't this stress. You know, everyone was like super nice to each other. Not that they weren't at Robuchon, but it was just like on another level. You know, and after service on a Friday, we all had champagne to drink, and because we're in Champagne, as you do, and, you know, so it was just champagne after service, great, nice. And you know, there's a proper canteen. You sit down and have half an hour for your breaks, and it's all very different. And
did you like it then, that way of working? Or as much as it sounds very,
I found it a bit boring.
I was going to say, it sounds like you
just did, just, you know, but it gave me, you know, headspace to like just, you know, really sort of, I guess, recharge the batteries and what have you. And anyway, so, you know, I probably stayed there for 6 months, you know, and then I got the call, you know, from Pierre, from David, the restaurant manager, saying, you know, Richard is leaving, do you want to come and take the reins? And I remember having several, because again, I didn't have a mobile phone, I had several phone conversations in this phone booth about coming back and what we're going to do and everything. So yeah, so I then came back to London to Pilater. Yeah.
Were you always keen to come back? And you didn't?
Well, listen, I wouldn't. I was keen on coming back, but I would have carried on working in France had that opportunity not arisen.
You had options, basically.
I think I would have, once I had finished there, I probably have gone on, because at that point, I was then kind of the understanding of what chefs to really go and work for. And,
right.
For instance, I wanted to go and work with, I think I was either going to go and work with Michel Touagro or Marc Marat after that, if that hadn't come along. Yeah.
Wow. So you were called to come back, but in a completely different way that you were working before at the restaurant. So you were called back, come back as head chef?
As head chef, yeah.
And an ownership or just a head chef?
As ownership as well, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Big call to get, right?
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, it was, again, a lot of... So basically, I had a call and, agreed, and I was coming back, and then Richard would, have a handover with me, and then we'd inform Michelin, and, I then came in and, and then took over.
Because the restaurant had stars at that point.
I had 2 stars at that point.
So for those, again, that don't know, what happens to the stars when Richard
Well,
left?
basically, you'll either lose 2 or 1, for sure. So I had to, I had to prove myself. It wasn't like I was going to just walk in and be given them, it's because they are the chefs after all, and so Richard was leaving, and I had to come in. So I had a couple of weeks or a week's handover with Richard. He then left, and all the staff were going to stay with me for a month, and then I'd be on my own. But when he left, they all kind of left after a week, and I was on my own. Me and a couple of others.
So you're 25 at this point.
I was 25, yeah.
And you're walking in to now be a head chef for the first time.
And at that point, you realise that your learning stops in terms of
interesting
being. Well, it's another form of learning.
Yeah,
you are, I guess, the one that's in charge. You're one that's instilling everything from learning, teaching to menu development to dishes to how the restaurant works and ticks and and in a way you're not learning from someone else. That's it. It's you.
Yeah.
So it's very different, it's the extra pressure, it's the extra stress, and I kind of was already, stressed because all the chefs left and there was just me and 2 others, working again, 90, 100 hours a week. I was working 6 days a week. It was just, monotonous.
Yeah. What did you want to do with the restaurant? Obviously putting your name to it and putting the stamp.
Well, it was a case of, the other side of it was, everyone knew that I was coming in and I was taking over, so... Nobody wanted to come and work for me because I was an unknown, although I had a good CV, and everyone thought I was going to lose, 2 stars or if definitely not 1 star, and so why would everyone want to come and work for me until I had proven myself and da-da-da-da. So, it was a lot of, I guess, negativity a little bit in terms of, wanting to come and work for me and what was going to happen.
How did you deal with that? Were you pretty just keep cracking on?
I just got on with it and, kind of kept my head down and got on with what I had to do and, cook some good food and just hope for the best.
So what did happen? You lost 1 star? The restaurant lost a 1 star or 2 stars?
Well, basically, because of the way that we had informed Michelin, I came in and started literally as the guide comes out. So the guide comes out in February. I just started after that. Mm-hmm. So we then, we went into that whole calendar year still with 2 stars.
As you were saying,
and then when the guide came out, it just meant that I had a full 10 months really before they obviously go to print to try and keep 1, but as it transpired, I kept 2.
Did you think you were going to keep 2?
No, not at all. No fucking way.
Really?
No.
So the getting 2 was a complete surprise.
I had no clue.
Damn,
So I kind of was hedging my bets at keeping 1,
Yeah.
But no, I had no way on the planet was I thinking that I'd keep 2.
The day that it came out and you had 2, you must remember that pretty clearly.
I remember it. Yeah, I was like beaming like a Cheshire cat. I was in cloud 9. I couldn't believe it. That had actually happened. I was, a 2-star chef at the age of 26.
That's obviously very publicly documented. What was that kind of pressure like in gaining that, but also just afterwards?
No, listen, I mean, it was, I guess there are, positives and not positives with it, I mean, in terms of the press that we got in terms of, filling the restaurant, in terms of, getting staff now and people, and me having some, a bit of credit in terms of what I, had done over the last, 10 months. And, so there was all that. And then there was the added pressure and stress of obtaining and keeping, the 2 stars. So that was...
You said that year of getting 2 was the hardest year, almost your career.
Well, one of them, yeah. But say...
Had lots, yeah.
Had lots, but, it is, it's very exciting as well. And being kind of unknown, is a little bit of less stress, because it's not like you've got the extra weight on your mind and your body of being someone, that's kind of, I guess, was the only or one of the pluses,
Yeah. And I guess leadership for the first time for you, completely running a kitchen, you at this point worked with so many incredible chefs and leaders in their own right. What was your style and approach to it? Did you know what kind of leader you were at that stage?
Well, listen, at that point I was, I was a bit of a, I think, an obnoxious twat, probably a little bit, I think, in terms of how I behaved. And I was not the easiest to people, but I think, when you're at that age, you kind of don't know any better. And
no.
I definitely didn't. And, I was definitely a shouter and a screamer. And I think I put a lot of pressure on, on myself when I didn't need to.
Right.
And also the fact that, at that age, knowing, that you have, with the help of, obviously, yes, 2 other chefs, I had my brother Rob came, and another chef, William Drowell, who was there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And, there was basically 3 of us on and off, with some other chefs coming in as well, helping. And, so it was hard. And, I had, at that early age as well, I had Aidan Byrne was there, helping. And, so it was hard, the amount of pressure on trying to, I guess, perform, knowing that we didn't have that much staff made it even harder,
God, Joe, I can only imagine the pressures from every angle at that stage. There isn't really one area that's calm.
And because at that age, you're also untrustworthy of others doing what you can do. And because I guess because of, we didn't have that much staff, I was taking on a lot of extra things that I had to do,
right.
And if I wanted to, develop and push the menu, it had to come from me, because we didn't have enough staff to do that. So, I was working, as I said, crazy hours to do things that I wanted to do. And because I kind of put myself in that frenzy of no one could do what I could do, that was extra pressure, because at that point you didn't trust anyone to be able to do what you could do. So, there's a lot of mental anxiousness for nothing, I would say.
2 stars though.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, when you do realise that it is just a plate of food, then, you don't need to get yourself so worked up. You don't.
I feel like that whole experience might have changed who you are as a chef then, and who you are as a leader, going through that.
Oh, yeah, it definitely does, because there are a lot of things that that you shouldn't be doing. And I also wanted to, at that point, also sort of, I guess, showcase that I was also, being responsible in terms of running the business side, because at that point I know that the restaurant was not making much money at all, and financially I wasn't, doing that well. So I then started going to the market, buying all the vegetables. So I was getting up. I was getting up at 3 a.m. to go to the market. I mean, crazy shit like this. I really shouldn't have, but I did. So I was then getting, sometimes 2 hours sleep, 3 hours sleep again, So I was going to the market 3 times a week. But the upside of that was, we were making a lot of money in those days. It really was like, the restaurant was booming, and because of obviously people wanted to come, because I was the youngest, 2-star chef, and all of this, the restaurant was heaving. We were doing the crazy covers, we were doing, whatever, full every lunch, and we were full every dinner, and so it was crazy time.
Did you ever at that time think sort of that 10-year window that you did set out at Coating College, did you ever think back to that bit and that guy that Waggle was saying?
Why, I did, yeah, because like when I started getting the press clippings and everything that had happened, and I became, the youngest 2-star, I sent them to my teacher in college.
You said?
I cut out clippings and I sent it to him.
Did he?
So I knew he was still, still. Yeah, no, he did. Yeah, he wrote me a letter saying, "Can't believe it, congratulations." Nice. But listen, at the end of the day, as I said, hard work does pay off. But I think it also has a negative side of it as well. But at that point, I was very driven in terms of what I wanted to do and what I wanted to achieve. And as I said, that I really did fill those 10 years well with who I wanted to go and work with.
100%. So after some time there, you actually moved away from the restaurant world, and you were doing some stuff in the Daylesford connection that I knew nothing about at all. So that must have been a complete step away from restaurants and going into something new.
Yeah. Basically, I wanted to have a bit of time out and recharge. And it's funny because I, at that point, was working privately for various people.
Right.
For instance, I worked with Andrew Lloyd Webber and some other sort of well-known people, and Carol Bamford, who was looking for a chef to work for her privately. I said, okay, well, I'll come. Because it paid well, and it was just time away from the kitchen and a little less stress, and she knew who I was, and obviously had a pretty good track record and CV, and then I was helping, I guess, I was cooking at her own home and other homes around the world and whatever, and then she says, to me, oh, I'm thinking of starting this organic farming business, in my little village called Daylesford. And I said, okay, well, what do you want to do? And she literally she showed me the barn that it is today, a tiny little thing that it was back then. And she said, oh, I'm thinking of doing, because I have been organic farming for a number of years now and got my accreditation, and, we have our own meats, beef on 2 estates and lamb and what have you. And they had their own abattoir, and she
said, they had all of this before.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So she wanted somewhere to showcase it, and I said, look, I'd be happy to help and whatever. So I then basically started. We opened the farm shop, and I helped them make some products, and there was like 5 of us working in there. So in a way, it kind of really opened my eyes up, because at the end of the day, back then, we're talking, 2000. So when I had become a first head chef at Pierre, there was not this whole, from farm to table message, story, food miles, transparency, sustainability, organic. There was nothing. And, it suddenly opened my eyes up to like, Jesus, we have good produce in this country, in terms of what is being made. And because of Carol, it was like, this is really crazy. We've got good British farmers here. There's no communication here in terms of, connecting or working with restaurants. Why can't we do that? And, being much more sense as a pied-à-terre, I was just like, ring up the fishmonger, finger up the butcher, ring up the veg, can I have this X, Y, Z? He didn't talk about where it come from. No. How it's getting to you. I mean, who was on the farm, who was, making the produce. There was nothing of that. There's no messaging, no transparency. So I thought, this is where I could really do something different. And that's really, I stayed with her for, 2.5, almost 3 years, on and off. And then, back in 2003, I then, jumped back in it again because I was missing. Because I say it was such a nice life, and it was, I kind of had said to myself in my head that if I'm not careful, I would stay there, and I could have done.
Because was it quite peaceful for you? I know you're probably working.
Oh, it was, yeah. I know it was. I was working, like 8 hours a day.
Glorious.
Can you imagine? I literally used to dream. Okay, when I was at Robert, I used to dream. A lot of you would think I'm a bit, weird about this, but I used to dream what it would be like to be a normal person and have more than 3 hours sleep.
Really?
Yeah, I used to think, what would it be like to sleep for 6 hours, like proper every day, 8 hours, because it was just
so alien to you, I guess.
Totally alien, and at that point, I was like sleeping, 6 hours, 8 hours, I just thought this is a nice life. I was getting, paid very well, and I could do what I wanted to do. I was kind of my own boss.
But was it still creative, I guess? I mean,
and also the interesting side for me is working with farmers, and I was going, I'd go to the abattoir, see how that would work. I'd helped to do some butchery in terms of teaching them sort of more chef cuts as well, and all of this. So it was interesting. Yeah, it really was.
And so you were there for a couple of years, and then, as you say, you decided to go back to the world of restaurants.
Yeah, I was basically missing the hours and the adrenaline and being able to cook, fine dining food and Michelin food, and yeah, that's what I missed.
And you started your own place.
So I started Tom Aikens, in 2003.
Starting your own place and building it from effectively scratch, right? There was no real big fund. You weren't walking.
Well, I mean, in terms of funding and everything, then you still could get, you could, as long as you did a reasonably good business plan, you could go to the bank and get a loan.
That's what you did.
About $500,000, I think it was, something close to.
In like
when we got investors as well.
Yeah, of course.
As well, but yeah, you could.
It was obtainably easy.
Yeah, it was doable.
To do.
Yeah.
So what was the plan with?
You do that these days.
No, you can't even get a meeting with a bank. They can't even see them in person. Right. But the Tom Aikens restaurant, what was the plan with it? What did you want to create?
At the end of the day, I wanted, again, to make a name and a reputation for myself, and just to see where it would go.
Yeah,
I mean that was the story. We just did fine dining food, and we did a la carte. We then did a tasting menu as well. But it was, we hit the ground running. I mean, I think, this was again, I guess, boom time with restaurants. We were flat full, all the time. We were doing 40 for lunch, sometimes even 50 for lunch, and 45, 50 for dinner.
Wow.
And, I don't know how we did it, because I remember, the staff I had was very, very good. I had Aidan as my head chef, and Elwyn Boyles, who's an amazing pastry chef. He was my pastry chef, and and others in there, and they were literally, I think, I think we had like 5 chefs, that was it. And we're churning out, a la carte with like 6 or 7 choice dishes, plus, tasting menu, and I don't know how we did it. We were doing, as I said, big numbers as well. It was just balmy.
Yeah. And was that from literally day one?
Pretty much, after we got the reviews coming in, yeah.
Because for you, obviously, you kind of been away from the scene for 2-3 years, it might be, coming back into it. Did you feel any form of kind of like, I need to make sure this is the best it can be, like the pressure? I just want to do what I want to do best.
Well, I wanted to do what I wanted to do, but I mean, I think I guess the difference that I was doing was trying to include farmers in what I was doing, and and that whole story of where produce was coming from and what we were using and everything like that was more on the horizon of the messaging of what we were doing, and I guess having an important part of that story. And that's where I came also up with then Tom's Kitchen as well, and doing that whole transparency and messaging and making the suppliers part of the story of what we were doing was a real focal point for Tom's Kitchen as well.
Because Tom's Kitchen started with one site and then went on to multiple sites around the UK. For you at that point, I'm guessing what your answer is going to be to this question, but the juggling of more things and putting more and more things around you, was it purely based on just, I want to try and achieve, I want to try and succeed? Or did you ever feel, you had 2 years of a easier life and a more peaceful life?
I guess it was a bit, and the Tom's Kitchen first one we did was such a success that we then thought, we've got to do more, and but I think I guess when you have as we did a really good, strong following in terms of what we were doing, with Tom Aikens, and in terms of the first Tom's Kitchens, it was kind of something that we wanted to do,
and build it through that. So the Tom Aikens, the restaurant, you gained your first star in a year.
Yeah.
That's again pretty huge achievement. How did that was that the goal? Was that part of the plan, or did that?
It was definitely the plan of what we wanted to do, and getting a Michelin star was again a great credit to the team that we had, and not just me, that's for sure. And it was where we wanted to be aiming. Yeah.
Because after you opened Tom's Kitchen as well, going back to the main restaurant, you also won 5-star status with the AA Rosettes as well. Yeah. So it continued to grow and grow and grow.
Yeah.
Did you again, I know there's a level of planning to this, but was it just continuing, moving forward? We want to get bigger. We want to keep opening more sites. Was that a mindset, or was it like we want to just have something that is still us, if that makes sense?
Well, no, I mean, there was definitely something that we, I mean, I was that, I was definitely a chef that wanted to be in the kitchen all the time and to cook and to lead from the front. It wasn't like, I was there still going, even at Tom Aikens, I was going to the market, 2-3 times a week still and doing all that because it was, it was my own business and I wanted to make sure, in every way that I could was to the positive side of it as well. And because we were, I guess, so busy at that point, I remember, that we paid back the loan from the bank, I think literally in the first 6 months. It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jesus. It was going that crazy.
It was, it was crazy.
That's ridiculous. That's mental in the first 6 months.
First 6 or 9 months, that was mad.
Flipping hell. A random piece. Olympics 2012. Yeah. You carried the torch.
I did, yeah.
What was that like?
Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it was... at that point, I also, which, a lot of people don't know, but I do a lot of stuff with charitable organizations, different charities. And I think, it's something that we all can do a little bit more of. And I think when you get to a certain level of public exposure and being able to use that in a positive way is a good thing. And when, the Olympics were coming to the UK, I got involved purely as a sort of an ambassador role to be able to help to raise funds for athletes. Right. Because at that point, there's a certain amount of money that comes from government. You had the national lottery money, but then a lot of them are self-funding as well in terms of, some of the stories you hear of athletes of not having enough money to train and, be it because they can't afford for the coach or the equipment or whatever. And, it's pretty hard stuff, and they are, training day in, day out, 12, 14 hours. And the thing is, the amount of stress that these athletes go through, knowing as well that they may not even make the team and they're in this tunnel for about 3.5 years until they actually know that they may or may not make the team, and even when they're on the team, for instance, some of them, be it, I don't know, say a long jumper, it's a 10-second window that they know that they're either going to get a medal or not, and they build that up for over training solidly for 3.5 years. I mean, the stress and the pressure on that was crazy. But as I said, I was helping in terms of raising funds purely through, as a chef, being able to do, I was doing private dinner parties and big noteworthy banquets for them and helping them, sort of raise significant funds either through doing charitable dinners at home and raising funds through that. So, at that point, I love sport as well, and that's another side that I kind of got into was, sort of fitness and discipline on that side. And so they'd asked me, because of the help that I had given, that if I wanted to run with a torch, and I said, absolutely.
What was the bit you ran?
So I actually ran across Chelsea Bridge.
Wow.
So that's the one that is next to Battersea Power Station.
Yeah.
And it was funny because it was, you only ran for I think it's 3 minutes, literally.
Oh, really? Makes it look, every time it looks like it's a 5K.
From the start of Battersea Park by Chelsea Bridge there, all the way over the bridge, round to the corner by that, whichever hospital it is, I can't remember that hospital, to the traffic lights, and that was it. But, you're kind of in a haze and a daze of people going crazy and nuts, and all I remember is the synchronization of the torch, swapping as well was incredible.
Because you actually who did you pick up from? Do you actually do a pass thing?
Well, you basically, you have your torch.
Yes.
Your torch is then lit from their torch.
Oh, yes.
Their torch is then taken out of action.
Yeah, gassed
off.
Yeah.
Ignition off and everything, and then you get to keep that. You get to keep that torch.
You've got your torch.
Yeah, I have my torch at home. Yeah.
That's mega.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, of all the things that you get to do,
I still have the dodgy tracksuit as well. It's kind of funny. It's great. It's actually not a dodgy one too bad. It's actually white and gold.
Yeah.
As I wore it to a party or something a couple of years ago because it was I think it was obviously quite quite sort of, opulent in terms of,
It's a good flex, that.
It was, yeah. It was quite cool, yeah. So, I've still got it. Yeah.
Amazing. Going back to the kind of the empire you had at the time, or, all the sites and everything, you then started closing down some of Tom's Kitchen sites just to focus on other things. Was that also to do with economics and
well, at that point, because I decided after whatever, where are we to then? I think it was like 12 years with Tom Aikens that it was becoming increasingly more and more difficult to run a business on 6-day operation and with staffing and and we closed that. I still had the Tom's Kitchens going, and I at that point wanting to find something smaller, easier to run. Our rent there was going up significantly, they said, after we'd had been over 10 years, so it was increasing. We got a very favorable rent where we were there, but it was going to go up massively. I think literally by a third or some massive down. So
margins are already tiny.
Yeah. So and then with Tom's Kitchen, we had I think six sites or whatever it was, and the economic climate was going down, and then because of I guess my own story of what I want to do in terms of fine dining again. We had made the point at some point of trying to sell them all and get rid of them all, because it just for instance we had a site in Canary Wharf that wasn't doing that well and economically, and at that time financial institutions were also closing down, and the one next door to us was Credit Suisse that had shut down, and that was another staple of our customers. And literally just before COVID and everything came along, we managed to get rid of most of them.
Do you find it quite hard? I mean, I imagine hard's one way to put it, but from an emotional perspective, closing your own restaurants, what's that experience like?
Well, it's not nice, and everyone does it. I mean, I think every chef has has sites that they kind of think are going to work and it's going to really well, and I mean, it's a day-to-day thing now, I think across the landscape of restaurants that are opening and then closing, it's scary. No business is a success story in terms of being a slam dunk. There is, the climate is volatile. It's not easy,
But it was, I mean, I imagine it didn't all happen very quickly. But from what you're saying, it sounds like it happened over time, slowly reducing it down, to then look at opening Muse, which is obviously your main site in London. I know you've got other things internationally, which all sound amazing, to be able to go international and have a bit of travel and not be in the big smoke. But what was the purpose of Muse? You mentioned a little bit around having that smaller kitchen, having a more intimate feel. Is that really what you were going for?
It is, yeah. And I think, the story of what I wanted to do, and to a degree find my final resting place was to have a beautiful place that that would be able to replicate really what I wanted in terms of a restaurant, and to sort of tell my story and just be a bit more personal, and I think with Muse it's we try to do something different in effect of not just doing it for the sake of being different. And it was some space that we wanted to know where you could have a visible kitchen on both levels, that was open, that people could see what was going on. So there was kind of that sort of intimacy, and then in terms of the whole story side of what we wanted to do, I just wanted to have somewhere that I could sort of tell various different stories about, be it me as a chef or my career or something with the suppliers. And so we decided on the menu to do stories rather than descriptions of the food, and just little snippets like that, where you could show a personal side with a bit of humor as well. And we do a lot of tableside service in terms of bringing things to table, telling a story, and just having that sort of fun side go with it as well.
Do you think Muse really describes where you're at generally?
Yeah, I think definitely as a person, as a chef, and it's I do love what I do. It gets me out of bed every day, and every time I go into music, it's exciting. And having a great workplace that staff like coming to work in, and and again with a lot of people, we reduce the hours hugely, so there's a good work-life balance for everyone as well,
including you.
No, because I like hard work. Yeah.
Looking back at everything we've spoken about for the last hour or so, do you feel like you've achieved almost everything you set out to do when you left Catering College?
I don't think so. No, I think there's a chapter still open. I still want to push Muse, to push Muse forwards, and in the direction that I feel that we are going in terms of obtaining other accolades. We just got our 5 AA Rosette the other year as well, which was great. And then to do another part of the side, as I said, with my twin brother Rob, in terms of potentially doing something with him.
Nice.
Would be nice as well.
Yeah.
It'd just be a great story, and to kind of really, because that was something that I said at the very beginning when we were both starting our road to being chefs, was to do something together eventually. And none of us knew whether what path it was, when or where that would happen, but we both kind of agreed that we should do it someday. So you never know. Yeah.
So that's in the future, maybe.
Yeah.
And a final couple of questions from me. Of all the kitchens we've spoken about, all the experiences you had, like everything put together, where do you think you learned your biggest lessons?
I think with Pierre Koffman and Joël Robuchon, because they're both very, very different kitchens. And
of course.
I think in terms of communication, in terms of the actual cooking side of it, Pierre Koffman was all about gutsy, big, bold flavors, not so much about how something looked on a plate. And whereas Joël was all about tweezer action. Tweezer action. In terms of, that was the first time that I saw someone using tweezers. And that was back in the 90s. Right. I have to tell a story as well. It's the first time as well that I saw a water bath being used.
Oh, really?
This was in...
Yeah.
This was
in the bags, and then...
Yeah. And I was like, what the hell is that? Like, he's putting something in a plastic bag. He then stuck an aerofoam sponge to the bag, and then he had a probe that went through the sponge into the... like, what is that? And then he put in a pan of hot water. I was like...
Was that in the 90s?
It was.
I thought it was just like a noughties, late noughties.
Well, no. He was, as I said, pushing boundaries. So he literally had this big pan of water with this big thermometer in it, and that was it. Well, there we go. I was like, oh, this is cool.
Do you believe in the water bath?
I think it's good for some things, not for everything, because I think at the end of the day, chefs need to have a skill of actually cooking. And water baths, they definitely have their place in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not something that I would say. I think people have gone away from that a little bit, and you've seen now that everyone is doing open fire cooking and cooking on grills and charcoal, and that has been the rage for definitely a number of years. And we also at Muse, we have our own little charcoal grill, and that's very, very tiny, but we use it for everything. So yeah,
it's the way to go. My last question: what does it take to be a successful restaurateur and chef?
I think at the end of the day, if you want to really get somewhere, and I always sound like a prehistoric, granddad preaching. It's not. Yeah, listen, it's not all about just hard work. It's about having the foresight of where you want to go. And I always just say to chefs, look, put your wish list down, in terms of where you want to go and work with, who you want to go and see, or what you want to go and see. Because at the end of the day, being a chef or being involved in hospitality, it can take you places that you never dreamed of. You can meet people that you never dreamed of. It can get you into situations and conversations that you never dreamed of. It's a great connector of people.
Yeah.
You have a mobile phone. You can reach out to countless chefs that you never dreamed of that you could before they may not answer you, but at least you can reach out to them and drop them a message and say, look, I'm interested in becoming a chef. So I'd like to travel, like to come. And that is the great thing now, that because our whole network is based, on the mobile in terms of communication and everything, and you can visually see what chefs are doing, which you couldn't in my heyday. So there's this whole transparency of what you could go and do, and that is amazing. And I think for chefs who want, or anyone that wants to come into hospitality, there's just a whole, I was dare say, smorgasbord of what you can do and where you can go and travel. So I think the hospitality industry is a very, very exciting place to be able to be in, because you can end up working in London, and then you could go and end up working, God knows, Iceland, Mexico, Italy, Australia,
everywhere,
wherever.
Yeah. Incredible. Well, Tom, thank you so much. It's been fascinating to learn more about you, and I really appreciate the time, and congratulations on everything. And it's exciting to see where Muse is going to go, and I know you've got other places as well around the world. So a massive thank you from my side for coming down, and I'm sure we'll see you soon.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.